Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Currency Recap. Joe with you here. It's the 12th of June, which means it's Thursday. Let's get into it. You guys know how this works. Make sure you take responsibility for the outcome. I want to get into the meaningful news of the day. Let's break down some of the charts technically. And if I've got some trades to share, we're going to share them.
All trades and analysis in this video are intended for professional traders only. This content does not constitute financial advice and is for educational purposes. This video is being released after a short delay due to Compliance Department review. Maverick members receive this content immediately as part of their daily trading resources. If you're ready to level up, consider joining Maverick Currencies. Our traders trade firm capital and keep 70 to 80% of profits. You bring the skill, we provide the backing. Let's get into today's market recap and see how the pros are trading the currency markets.
As we move to the market analysis, it was kind of a sideways day. To tell you the truth, there was only a couple of currencies that participated, and we'll get there. So the US PPI follows the CPI. We've been watching some US economic news as of late, and we do see some slowing. It's not crashing, it's not falling apart, it is slowing. So it has been this soft landing that the Fed had been talking about for a long, long time. We also got the US unemployment claims slightly higher above, slightly above expectations. This is the second time I think I've seen this, but it's not massive. Far, it's been quiet, at least on some of those economic numbers. Now, what did react to it when you do think of a slowing US economy is what? The chances of maybe cutting interest rates? Well, it sure looked like the dollar reacted to that, and this is where we are at. Yen flat, the US dollar down about 0.6%, but the franc also up 0.63%. I've been actually seeing an inverse correlation between these two as of late, kind of a flight to safety. Maybe there's no tariffs being put on Switzerland. I don't know. But anyways, nothing else really moved. Take a look at that. 0.28 on the euro. The pound came out with their gross domestic product today. It was lower than expected, but they've had some stronger ones in the past, but it didn't really seem to do much. Canadian dollar in line, flat. Aussie, New Zealand, all flat. So the big moves were basically just the franc and the US dollar, probably because maybe some of those weakening economic numbers. I don't know. That's just my thoughts. S&P flat. It did close slightly higher. We're in this nice consolidation here. I'll show you here in a second. World index as well. Crypto took a little bit of a pullback. Gold with a move to the upside, and oil flat as well. So it was a pretty boring day across the board. Taking a look at the cryptos, these moves are actually kind of boring outside of what they usually do. The only one actually holding on to a slight gain was cash, and we'll take a look at that as well. So where are we at? Well, I'm going to keep it as a +2. The +3, +2 area makes sense. I'm just seeing a little bit more flattening or consolidation, kind of a high base at this area. The slopes look good. We are definitely half glass full here, folks. So if you're going to make an error to any direction, it has to be to the upside at this point. Let's take a look at this chart. And this is kind of that consolidation that we're at. So we've got this base going on after we broke through a resistance, after a pullback. This is kind of the target. I try to keep this in the frame here, folks, but we're below it, consolidating, kind of waiting for that next excuse or reason for the markets to actually move higher. So we're just going to keep an eye on this for now. But it does create, take a look at the ranges here. It's tough to correlate them, obviously, to the currency markets, but when we don't have a lot of volatility, a lot of reaction, fear, worry, things start to go sideways, and I'm starting to see that in the currency market as well. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't change based on one tweet, so let's make sure that we're aware of that. Moving over to the economic numbers, the ones that I think kind of created today's action, the CPI came out yesterday, and it was a little bit of a drop, showing that inflation is indeed slowing. It's going in the right direction. The Fed expected it to slow down, expected the economy to get a little bit softer, and it has been. Here is the PPI and the unemployment claims. So PPI follows suit. The unemployment claims up a little higher. It's not like it's massively higher, but it's showing that, hey, it's going in the right direction, according to kind of what the Fed was expecting to see over the last little bit, regardless of some of the worries and fears of the unknown tariff impact. Now, that can change. This is the pound here. This is the GDP month over month. Now, that looks like a pretty good drop, but I was doing a little bit of, I looked a little bit further back, And in March and I believe April, there was an increase in the GDP. And this is kind of, it was a pretty big jump. And now we have a pretty big move to the downside. It's to me, it's just looking a little bit more tumultuous. But the pound itself really didn't seem to do too much today, as you'll see here in a second. So with that being said, let's just go right ahead and jump into our currency analysis and see what these guys did. First off, let's jump to the yen. It was flat today. You could see that it had a nice little bounce off of a bottom, and it just kind of rolled back over slowly. I'm not seeing anything like a massive sell-off. I'm just seeing a little bit of a pullback after a pretty good surge to the upside. It's kind of showing a little bit more of a consolidation to me than it is any sort of a distinct trend. However, I'm not going to ignore the fact that it has come down, setting these highs, setting lower highs and kind of breaking this floor. So the RSI did get above the 50. We'll see what it does. We'll see if it can consolidate here, move sideways or slightly higher, but I have to keep it at a -1 at this point. I do like the RSI move, showing that it was a pretty decent bounce, but it doesn't look like it wants to go anywhere. Now, it could turn around and set this first bull pullback, so I'm just going to keep it at a -1 for now. The US dollar here is the weakest, right? Nice breakdown. We did see that coming. It looked like it's been weak for a while. But what's interesting about this last push to the downside, it did come with a little bit more of an economic move with it. The CPI showing slowing, the PPI showing slowing, a slight increase in unemployment claims shows that, oh, geez, an interest rate cut might be a little bit more on the table than others thought. So I think this is more of an anticipation slide. I don't think it's going to completely collapse unless something happens, but just be aware. But a good slide on the RSI, great breakdown of support when it comes to price action. The moving average didn't really turn yet, but I'm still going to give it that -3 because it's a pretty significant move to the downside as it breaks support there. Going to the franc seems to be the direct opposite. The franc, to me, was more of a consolidation, kind of a sideways. But take a look at this RSI. Look at the momentum that came into this thing. It's like everybody sold the dollar and went to the franc. Yeah, I'm making that up. But, geez, it kind of looked like it today. So we have a resistance area I was looking at here on the velocity chart, and it has exceeded it. I don't know if it's going to stay there. I imagine it's going to consolidate or at least pull back. We'll see what the reaction is, but that surge through the RSI was pretty strong. Good turn here in the moving average. Good flip in the SAR. This right here, I'll draw it again, breaking above that resistance. I actually went polar opposites here. I put the dollar at -3 and the franc at a +3 for momentum. Let's jump over to the euro. The euro did hang in there. It was showing some strength. Nice little breakout. This thing's been pretty strong, pretty a +1, +2 for a while. It did seem to hit a point. Looks like it's going to pull back. I like the RSI seems a little extended. It looks like it's coming back. The turn in the moving average and the flip in the SAR is great, but I kept it as a +2, and the only reason I did was today's candle, or I should say the last couple hours candle. It just seems a little extended. I'd like to see it retest. +3 is fine too, folks. I just gave it a, +3 is fine. I just gave it a +2 because I think it's gonna at least consolidate or pull back a little bit. It might not, but it is definitely super strong and it looks really good here. Let's go to the pound. Now the pound had the GDP today, but it didn't really do much. It's just more of a consolidation. I'm fine with this at a 0. You can see the RSI kind of flipped from positive here back below the 50 and back up. So we'll see if this can't start to climb its way back up after setting this low. See if it can't try to climb its way higher. But it's pretty much a 0 at this point. Probably something you kind of want to avoid. Let's jump over to the Canadian dollar. And it's been hanging in there pretty decent. This is a very range-bound chart on the velocity side. It's been very interesting, almost predictable. However, it does react and it does change pretty quickly. Take a look at the RSI. It's basically the exact same thing along with the moving average. Look at that. So I'm just going to keep it at a 0. I'm just going to have it I'm just going to keep an eye on it and see if it can't change whatever it's been doing over the last little bit. But I don't have too much interest in it currently. Let's get to the risk on. This is the Aussie, and it was doing really, really good. I do like it, but it did pull back pretty significantly. It did break some support levels here. You could see I was actually looking at these areas, and it pulled back. The RSI did cross that 50. It's down below that. We have a little bit of a flip in the moving average. I'm going to leave that alone and flip in the SAR. It really depends. If this really kind of bends and turns here, I'm going to give this thing a little bit more than a -1. I've got a -1 just because of the fact of the RSI, and it did break these support levels. But if it turns here, folks, and sets a lower high, I'm going to easily go to -2, maybe even a -3 on that. It did come pretty quick, so we'll keep an eye on that. The Kiwi does look similar. It's got that rally coming back up to that moving average. It's got that same RSI. I decided to also put that at a -1. It really depends on if these are going to create that pivot point and maybe break that support level. So a little bit difficult today when it comes to just velocity to make some trades. So let's jump over to our cryptocurrencies. They actually slid quite a bit. This is Bitcoin. You can see it was up at a pretty decent little high here and just kind of faltered, slid a little bit. Seeing some economic weakness with the US dollar sliding. I don't know if they're correlated, but I'm seeing a little bit of reluctancy here in the cryptos. That can change on a dime. You guys know how these work. So nice slide here on the RSI. Nice, the angle through that 50 showing some weakness. I had to move that from super strong. I think I was at a +2, +1, but I did put it down to just basically kind of a 0. Bitcoin Cash was not as weak. It was actually the strongest of the majors that we follow. You could see that it did pull back, and it's looking like it wants to kind of roll over price-wise, but the RSI is flirting with the 50, so I decided just to kind of drop that to a 0, kind of a sit and hold, see what happens. Ethereum slid a little bit further. We had a little bit of a support level back here. Let me get my line. And it looks like it's sliding through that. Look at the drop here on the RSI. So I decided just to put that down to a 0. This is kind of a wait and hold. I don't like to overreact to cryptos too much because they are so volatile. Litecoin, on the other hand, is just showing a little bit more weakness. It doesn't mean it can't turn around with the rest of them. What I thought was substantial is what's happening here. It's starting to break a pretty decent support level. That's still got that same drop here on that RSI when it comes to momentum. So I went ahead and just took this to a -1. But all the others are pretty much flat for the day. But they did come back down from +3, +2. So here's the score that I've got. Everything kind of moved inside, interesting enough, right? Euro kind of stayed strong. I thought that was interesting. And then the franc had kind of a counter reaction to what the dollar did today. I think the dollar really was just kind of a reaction based on some economic news. We've been seeing some trending weakness and maybe some expectations of interest rate cuts sooner than later. So that's it. Those are the only two ones that really moved. Now, when it comes to possible trades, folks, I don't have much that I like, but what I can do is let's take a look at the dollar's weakness against some of those out there. So let's start with the two obvious. Let's go for the strongest and weakest. This is the U.S. franc, and you can see it almost feels like we've pretty much missed this. It did break down really nicely. It's fallen apart. Looks like it wants to continue to roll over. This might feel a little bit overextended. The RSI is really low. I like this rollover here that we're starting to see on the moving average. But if you feel like this might be something a little bit too extended, that's great. We can jump around some other stuff. Let's take a look at the Aussie US. I like the Aussie US. I think this is kind of neat. Looks like it's establishing kind of a high base here. You can kind of wait for this if we can get a little bit of a bounce in the Aussie or the Kiwi. I'll show you that here in a second. But I do like how it did kind of retrace this RSI. So continued weakness in the dollar and a little bit of a bounce in the Aussie might be good here. Might as well check the Kiwi since we're there as well. Very similar. Still got that kind of high base. Might be kind of pushing higher. RSI, I mean, it's kind of a horse apiece. Either one you want to choose seems like it's almost the same exact pattern there. The last one I'll look at is the euro, since it was pretty strong. It hung in there. And the euro, to me, just kind of feels like it's a little bit overextended as well. I do like this ascending triangle pattern, but it's kind of like that franc there. We might have missed it. It's already broke out. Looks like it's trying to retrace. So maybe the Aussie US or the Kiwi US might be something. But I'm really not going to force anything. It was interesting to see what today did, where the biggest movers were just basically the US dollar and the franc. Outside of that, everything kind of moved to the middle. So that's what I got for you today, folks. The U.S. markets continue to consolidate. Now, these markets are consolidating at a high base, so the glass is definitely half full when it comes to the equity side of things. However, the U.S. dollar a little bit lower because the increase, I should say, in chances of interest rate cuts. If we see a weakening economy, then all of a sudden the U.S. dollar should slip because, hey, maybe the Fed cuts interest rates. Outside of that, folks, let's just see if these trends continue. A little bit of a pull to the inside, not a lot going on. Today's not the best trading day, but hey, we'll see what happens tomorrow. Play relative strength and weakness as you see. Proper position sizing. Make sure you guys are following your plan. Thanks for joining me. We'll talk to you next time. Bye, folks.